Hey everybody, welcome back to Movie Master, where we rank, review, trailer react, and talk about movies and TV shows, and also sometimes video games and news about those particular subjects. Anywho, welcome back to the channel, guys, and for another video. Today I'm going to be doing a second rewrite of the series with The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man is not the most loving of the Spider-Man films. This is a very hard film to like as a fan of the Spider-Man movies, considering this came out after the big three Spider-Man movies that came before it, with Sam Raimi's Tobey Maguire trilogy. And a video I did actually make but cancelled and decided not to upload was about what happened to the film. Now, if you guys want to know about what happened to this cancelled Spider-Man 4 that never happened, check out a video in the description below from the channel Cut Short, which covers movies that were indeed cancelled. I'll also leave a link there for the cancelled Amazing Spider-Man sequels and links to both Cut Short, the Cut Short channel, and links to the Amazing Spider-Man rewrite and the channel Earthcore Studios. I'll leave links, all 5 of those links, down in the description below. So yeah. But nonetheless, this is a rewrite, so I've taken all the ideas from the Earthcore movie, from the actual film, the deleted scenes, and my ideas, I think they could fit into a good Spider-Man movie. This would be a more acceptable movie to other audiences, so here's what's going to happen. So the film opened the same way with the Columbia picture, the Marvel, the opening logo scene, Peter Parker's parents, them taking him all the way to Uncle Ben and Aunt May's, them disappearing, and the film was did the same up until we flash forward to Peter Parker. We see the same scene, and when he's talking to the girl in the hall, that is indeed Liz Allen. This will be Liz Allen instead of a random no-named character. This will be Liz Allen, our version of Liz Allen. So you chat to her, and she asks if she could take a photo of his car for her boyfriend for his birthday. And so, while walking around, sees Gordon get bullied by Flash and doesn't stand in to do anything. After this, he goes to class and meets up with Gwen. And Gwen implies that she did date, and indeed date, and had Harry Osborn as her last lab partner. They did date for a bit, but they broke up. And also, he left to go to England. So this does imply that Harry does indeed exist in this universe, so that when he pops up in the sequel, it won't feel so out of the blue when he does. After this, after the next class, Peter then goes out to lunch and sees Gordon get bullied again and decides to step in. This shows Peter his heroic side, and when he decides to, he takes a photo of Gwen and then sees Liz and goes up to Flash to tell them to put him down, and then gets beat up by Flash. After this, we cut back after his camera gets smashed. He sees Gwen again in his next class, which is English, and talks with Gwen a bit. And after that, continues, and we get back to when Peter's now home and talking to Aunt May about how he doesn't want spaghetti and meatballs, and then helps Uncle Ben with the plumbing issue and gets some stuff and finds his dad's briefcase. He looks through it and soon finds out more about his dad, and Uncle Ben tells him that it's Curt Connors. After telling him about this, Peter searches up and realizes it's from Oscorp. After this, he then realizes that this has something to do with it, and remembers that in an earlier bit, Gwen asked him if he could go to asked him that he could come to Oscorp after school to help her with the work. So the next day, he decides to. After school, he comes over there tomorrow after school and helps her with work, and enters Oscorp and goes up the escalator, and does not steal another guy's intern badge. He does take his own visitor badge that he asked for, that Gwen Stacy left him. After that, he then goes up and meets up with some of the interns, and the whole thing where that guy gets dragged out that's supposed to be there will not be shown in the film. Gwen tells Peter to go over there and not touch anything. Peter, as he's walking by, bumps into Mr. Youth, who he picks up the folder and sees the picture from the decay algorithm that he found in his father's briefcase. Dr. Youth takes it. Peter then notices he enters a room, and then he leaves, and Gwen tells him what is he doing and tells him to go over there and not touch anything, and so he does, and soon finds out there's been a spider breach in there. And the spider, who turned out to be nearby and that came out when Dr. Youth entered, was walking around, and luckily somehow managed to dodge all the people by jumping around. So during this, Dr. Connors is talking around with some of the many other people there and asking about what could possibly other ideas be, and Peter suggests cross-species genetics and has a back and forth banter like he does in the actual film with Gwen. So after this, he then sits back down on the desk and sees a spider is crawling up his arm. And right when he's writing, the spider is crawling up his arm continually. And when he's handing Gwen the paper to see what she thinks, she writes down her bit that she was supposed to write down and merges it together. And they soon write their paper together. And she said and edits it and says it's good. And then right before he leaves, he gets bitten on the back of the neck and leaves. And after writing, he then leaves and goes back on the train ride home. And he gets tired, so he decides to take the train home. And obviously the fight from the train takes place in the same way. But every time he lands a punch, we get a nice little cut black screen. That is dumb. I do not like that. The screen cutting the black every time he lands a punch on somebody is stupid. So, no, we're not going to have that. After this, Peter will then run back home and get back inside the house and act like a crack addict in front of Aunt-May and him. He looks like a bit of a crackhead. Not like a full-on one, but he looks a bit weird. He's acting weird and his powers are kicking in. The next day after going to sleep, he wakes up, smashes his alarm clock, destroys some of his bathroom, and then has his toothbrush still stuck to his hand and decides to rip it off and tries to type on his computer. The keys again attached to his computer. Later on, we see a shot of him looking at the decay algorithm and papers and homework. After that, he goes to Dr. Connors and talks to him a bit about his parents and writes down the decay algorithm. And they go to chalkboards and he shows him examples of all of it. After that, he realizes that maybe this could help him indeed. And so he decides that this should be able to help him. After that, we then cut to the next scene where Peter is again at school. So now Peter is at school and they're playing basketball and Peter knocks the basketball. And no, Flash Thompson knocks the basketball down and says rejected and knocks down the paint can. And the lady yells at him. And so Peter then picks it up and catches the basketball and later on embarrasses Flash Thompson, smashes that hoop, damages the backboard, and smashes the hoop, breaks the hoop and smashes the backboard. After this, Peter talks to Uncle Ben, and then he sees Gwen and says she's pretty. He's got you on his computer. They talk about it. She's a bit weirded out that she has him on his computer. He then says he's a pathological liar, so yeah. After this, Peter then leaves after chatting with him for a bit and chats with Liz Allen, and they turn out to go on dates. Right before that, Peter then leaves and goes to test out his powers and moves around trying to test out his agility and parkour and climbing up there but keeps failing, but soon succeeds. And soon starts using the chains to swing around. And right after he's finished, he screams, woo, like, whoa-ho, like, whoa-ho. Like, what? Like that, not like, woohoo, I don't know. He says it, wow. Yeah, like how he does it, and then after that, it will cut to the scene of him at Oscorp talking to Dr. Connors and talking about the lizards. They make many perfections and failures in the DNA. And slowly but surely, Peter starts to change. He beats up Flash Thompson again when he gets back to school, and then the next day he's still working at Oscorp in the afternoon, goes back to school, joins the basketball team, starts being a bit of a jerk, mean, dates Liz Allen, and is quite a mean jerk. And soon Liz Allen starts to lose why she even likes Peter, and soon after this, he soon learns that he's been a bit of a jerk, but just decides to ignore it and becomes arrogant, overconfident, and a dick. Basically like the one from the comics, the Ultimate Comics. And so, after this, Peter then, we see him at the shot back in Oscorp, and they perfect the serum, and he has a call from Uncle Ben, and doesn't answer it. And soon Uncle Ben leaves him the voicemail that we see in the real film, but when he gets home and realizes what Peter's done, he gets angry with him. And so, after working with Oscorp and perfecting the serum, Peter gets back and realizes that he forgot to get Aunt-May. And Uncle Ben tells him to get in there and apologize. They argue, they fight, and he leaves. And obviously he goes to the store to buy some milk. And while going to the store to buy some milk, he hasn't had the money to buy it. And after that, the guy next in line knocks down some stuff. And so he takes some money and throws Peter's chocolate milk. And Peter leaves. And then the store owner asks him to help. Peter says no and decides to leave. And so after leaving, he tries to chase after him. And Peter's walking by and Uncle Ben sees him. Then he leaves and gets up on a high area. Uncle Ben can't find him. And then hears a noise from an alleyway. And when he walks down there, Peter's on his phone and clicks it off, and here's a gunshot, and here's a loud banging noise. Here's a loud pop noise or gunshot noise. and walks down the alleyway and sees Uncle Ben's dead body and holds his blood all over his hands and his forehead, and then cries out and holds Uncle Ben and can hear him dying. Unable to save him, realizing what he has done, he then shows the next shot of him, the police talking to Aunt May, and as she cries, Peter realizes what he's done, and he asks for the photo, and then he takes it and leaves it on his desk, and he covers Aunt May up in a blanket, and Peter's in his we then cut to him trying to listen to the voicemail but can't. And so when Flash comes to try and talk to him, he slams Flash up against the locker, and after that walks away past Liz Allen, who hugs him, and then Gwen Stacy, who also hugs him. After this, he again puts a blanket over Aunt May, and then goes to sleep in his room with the window open, and sees that there's a paper on Uncle Ben's murderer there, and later on decides that he can't sleep and leaves and goes out at night and sees that guy again assaulting a woman and thinks it's him, and then obviously he punches him, and then a bunch of guys come up against him. He runs away, he nearly drops the guy off the roof, realizing it's not the killer, pulls him back up, falls through the roof and lands on the wrestling ring. The guy yells that they've seen his face, and then after that he sees a mask and realizes what he has to do, and he draws it in a book, and then soon takes a spandex he found from his school and sews it up to make it become his ski mask, and then chops holes in it and finds these nice looking glasses he found at the shop that was robbed, and uses them as his glasses, because the glasses that were from Uncle Ben's killer, who Uncle Ben punched them off. He takes the glasses and uses them as a reminder and uses them and starts fighting crime. Obviously, he doesn't capture all of these guys and lets some of them go, and basically hunts them down, and soon realizes he needs some webbing. So he uses prototype wrist launchers, takes a prototype wristwatch, ties it around his wrist, and then takes some little big pieces and attaches some, tries to make a web thing and whip a web with cable wiring that doesn't exactly work like the chains he imagined, and those were like a very early design. They were early concepts for a web shooter that did not work. He soon is able to make a prototype web shooter like the one we see in the actual film, when he takes a old watch that you could have attached one to, takes two straps, pulls the watch apart, and then takes some bio cables from Oscorp and uses some stuff at his home, types up a software that has the ability to enhance it tenfold. Because, I forgot to rewind in an earlier scene. After Peter leaves high school, he then goes to his apartment and sees Dr. Connors, who talks to him about coming by the lab and mentioned to build his own bridges. This word in mind, Peter later on takes his word in mind, and now he builds his web shooters and realizes that building his own bridges means building his own web shooters. After building the web shooters, he then starts using them to swing around the city and stop bad guys, but it's a bit hard for him to try and swing without momentum. So soon he captures one of the bad guys, and one of them he sees a Caucasian male and has blonde hair. It isn't the guy he wants, but he captures him and webs him up and leaves him there for the police, and is seen swinging away on phones. After that, he gets home and looks in the spandex, how it has aerodynamics, and realizes that everything is made of spandex. And then two nerds in front of him are talking about, geeks in front of him are talking about the aerodynamics of it all, and Peter realizes what it is. And so he soon realizes he has to make a red and blue spandex suit, red being his favorite color and blue being his Uncle Ben's favorite color, in honor of his Uncle Ben. And so he makes a new version of the watch, of the Mark II versions of the web shooters, and turns them on. And then after that, we finally see that deleted first-person shot. If you watch the Amazing Spider-Man 1 trailer, I'll leave it down in the link in the description below, along with another link. There is a video of a first-person shot. Some of it was even cut from the film on the channel called The Release the Raimi / Web Cut. I'll also leave that in the link in the description down below. But nonetheless, if you watch it, you'll see he'll jump around the buildings and then swing up to a building, and then he'll be on top of it and talk to Aunt May about organic eggs. And so after this, a car parks up, and it turns out to be a valet who leaves it there, and Uncle Ben's killer himself is near the car, unlocks it, and gets inside the car. Peter's in the back and talks to him and being cocky. Obviously, the guy gets up, he webs him to the Peter, webs him, attacks him, webs him to the wall, and then when he takes off his wrist, then realizes who it is. And so rips him off the wall and starts beating him to a pulp. And soon after finish beating him to a pulp, and realizes who it is, and that he could have stopped it but didn't. But threw him against back the wall, and whips him up to the wall again, and punches him, and then whips him and webs him in the mouth and punches him in the crotch, and then pops holes in his nose so that he can breathe, and then he hears policemen coming, and so he walks up to them, chats with them, and then runs away, and then nearly escapes them, and after swinging off, gets back home and argues a bit with his Aunt May about how he has secret, what is he doing at night, who is beating the hell out of him, and why does he keep turning up with scars and late at night. After they talk a bit, she leaves and he talks. So, after this scene, Peter's pretty much now back at school again. He's now talking. Gwen comes up to him and asks if he likes Branzino to come by his house and gives him the address. And so later on, he shows up at the house and gives her flowers that Liz picked out from her house. And she shows a bit of a disappointed face tiny bit of a disappointed face, but not much of one. And so, after this, Peter then meets Captain Stacy. They have Branzino. They get into an argument about Spider-Man and whether he's a hero. Peter realizes he may have a different image on other people, and so they go up to his top roof, and to the roof, and Peter and Gwen talk, and when he's about to tell Gwen he can't, so soon he tells her and webs her over to him, and tells her who he is, but they don't kiss, they're not together yet. After this, Peter then realizes there's sirens in the distance, and so leaves, and then after she leaves, when they're about to leave, he runs off the building and goes to swing out to find the lizard, and the fight plays out exactly the same. Dr. Yacht nearly gets killed. Peter saves the kid one of the kids who's been chucked, who is one of the dangling cars, saves him and realizes what it is to be Spider-Man. After that, the lizard wakes up in the sewers and then ends up setting up a base there. After this, Peter's talking to Gwen and does not kiss her at the end of the scene. He chucks the ball but doesn't dent that goalie post. He does not chuck the ball at all. So, yeah. But he does catch the ball but drops it. And after that, we then see Peter going to visit Dr. Connors and talk to Dr. Connors, who leaves after taking some office supplies. And after leaving, Dr. Connors has been slowly moving office supplies there for a few days. So, after this, in an earlier scene prior, actually, he and Dr. Connors and Dr. Yath were talking, and Dr. Yath said they could use the serum and he needs it now, but it needs some tweaking, because it isn't working, because in an earlier bit, Dr. Connors injected it and gave him his arm back. But he knows that it's not going to work, they need to refine it more. And Dr. Yath tampered with the serum, so he instead decides to inject it with him again. And so Dr. Connors does, and it turns him into a lizard and leads him to find Dr. Yath on the bridge. After that, obviously he wakes up in the sewers, he sets up base there, and Peter decides to go to Captain Stacy to ask if he can do it. Whilst this is happening, Dr. Connors goes to visit his son to talk to him one last time. And right after that, he leaves, and Peter, failing to convince Captain Stacy, walks off and sees Dr. Connors and jumps up on the roof when he can follow him from the street, and follows him on from the rooftops, and then talks with Dr. Connors and follows Dr. Connors actually, and sees him go into the sewer. So he follows him in there, and then the fight in the sewers ensues. And this is not how Dr. Connors finds out Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He soon finds a scent off Peter Parker off Spider-Man's suit when he takes a piece of tear off it. And so after that, he soon smells the scent back to Midtown High, and so he uses the sewer system to go all the way to Midtown High, and surprises two girls who are in the toilet. But Peter goes back to Gwen's apartment and is injured and gets help by getting cleaned up by Gwen. And Captain Stacy nearly finds George Stacy nearly finds them, but luckily Gwen wards them off. After that, they talk and then they swing away. They're on the clock together and they talk, but they don't kiss. After this, After this, then we get back to a scene where two girls on a toilet chatting in the school bathroom, and then after that, the toilet starts shaking, and so Lizard rips it out and nearly scares the girls, but goes after the Spider-Man who's in the building. And since the smell, and we see a shot of Flash terrified, decides to run away, knowing that it'd be a better idea. And so tells Gwen to go. Peter goes in with the crowd and changes into Spider-Man and surprises the Lizard. And then the Lizard takes him, throws him through another room. They fight for a bit. He slams him through a wall and nearly chucks an explosion thingy at him. And then after that, Peter and the Lizard fight. The fight ensues the same way with the Stan Lee cameo, and then chucks Spider-Man at the wall and runs away. Realizing that after realizing and finding the bag and it belonging to Spider-Man, he then, after not realizing he's Spider-Man yet, soon he passes by a blanket and then rips off and takes it. Spider-Man follows him without his mask on and finds Dr. Connors. Dr. Connors is now shocked yet petrified that Peter Parker's Spider-Man and what's going to happen to him and what's becoming of him. So Peter Parker takes him down to the sewers and talks to him, and Dr. Connors tells him about how he wishes to be whole again. And soon Peter realizes what he's about to do, and so Dr. Connors injects himself yet again. But when he's about to escape, Dr. Yath shoots him. Dr. Yath is about to shoot him, so the Lizard decides to run off, knowing that he'll be able to kill him another time, taking his devices with him. After this, Dr. Yath says was his accident with his parents really an accident, and so he asks two Oscorp personnel to try and take him down while he takes some of the stuff and escapes with it. And so when the Oscorp personnel comes to take him, the Lizard knocks Spider-Man away and eats the head off that one. And after that, well, Spider-Man is now knocked out, and Gwen calls him. When he wakes up, he answers Gwen's call and realizes that he needs to find an antidote, and soon finds an old notebook that has a tracker in it to a building. He takes the notebook and goes to a building and goes to an abandoned train station named Roosevelt. And soon, searching it up a bit on his phone and on the computer there, he realizes what Roosevelt is and goes to it. He soon finds an abandoned train and enters it, and then finds a computer with Richard Parker talking that he had to run away. That Norman Osborn had found falsified evidence against them. That they were massively doing research in genetics, and his spiders were astounding, like Dr. Connors said. But the spiders weren't working, and he knew that Osborn was going to use them for menacing purposes. So soon he got falsified evidence against Richard Parker, and Richard Parker knew that he had to destroy the spiders, which he had just done, and he now needs to flee and leave his son, knowing that he may never see his boy again, and that nothing matters more to them than Peter. But during that time, they did indeed work. Him and Dr. Connors did indeed work on the Lizard project for a bit before he disappeared and before he killed the spiders. The lizard somehow survived along with some of the spiders they had recreated, but unsuccessfully, but the lizards survived. So he knew that one day the lizards may survive, so he made an antidote that could be taken and used if it was ever to be used. And it was ever to be citywide, it could be mass produced. There were about 3 different vials that could be mass produced by Oscorp to spread out and cure people. So he took those antidotes and made sure that they could be used. And then we cut to a scene of Lizard getting attacked by the police and uses them and starts infecting the police. It does not actually turn them into lizards. It just really starts to affect them and soon starts to make them nearly die. So by this point, 5% of New York, 10% of New York has indeed died from this infection, and about 20% have now been infected. So with that, there's now 30% away. So 70% of them are now evacuated. Half of it infected around Harlem. It got infected from financial districts, from about Harlem through to Upper East Side. So now Hell's Kitchen, Midtown, and all the other areas have been evacuated. Half the city has been evacuated. And as they're evacuating, Spider-Man is going after to talk to Gwen to leave, but Gwen's evacuating everybody to get the system shut down. Dr. Yath, who's still there, was looking through a tablet of Dr. Connors, realizing what it is, and soon discovers the videos that will upload to the Oscorp servers, and soon finds out what it was. While Spider-Man's on his way, you see first-person shots of him, and then the police start chasing after him. And each policeman is corresponding, telling him where he's going, and then he gets shocked and gets knocked out. Obviously, right as he's getting shocked out, and when he falls down to the ground and lands on that taxi and then slams down on the ground, he'll roll and then land and get buzzed a bit. But we will not see that alternating shot. That's just too distracting. So, with this, cops will start landing down, and Captain Stacy will pull off Spider-Man's mask. After he's been handcuffed, Spider-Man breaks away from his handcuffs, smacks everyone around, and then soon is able to flip back his mask. And right before when Captain Stacy tells him to get down on the ground, Peter puts his mask on and turns around and tells him that his daughter is there and he needs to go. And he does, but a policeman does indeed shoot him in the leg, injuring him, so now he's getting over this slowly. Soon the police do indeed confirm that it was indeed him who had done it, and yes, in an earlier shot, a warrant was placed out for Spider-Man's arrest after the bridge attack. So Spider-Man is to be warded off, and the police have now confirmed to ward it off and leave Spider-Man to be. And when he gets up, one of the guys noticing it was the guy who saved him, and so exits his house and calls the guy to help him to get his connection with them. And so they leave, and he gets the cranes ready. One of these actors is Reginald Val Johnson, who plays a different character, who's a very excited person who's actually fascinated by this whole vigilante person. And so with this, we then see Peter Parker trying to get over there, and once he does, he's up on the building, and there's a crane there. When he's about to swing off, he fails and slows down. And well, the Lizard is now breaking into Oscorp, so now Peter has now been slowed down. But he gets lifted up by a crane and swings over, as he's now swinging over with Connors lurking around to try and find the Gonali device. And whilst he has swung past two buildings, latched onto another crane, swung past it, then whizzed past 3 more buildings, and then swung off a third crane with some cool whip swinging artistry and the big play of James Horn's Spider-Man theme. And then after passing 5 buildings, lands on the final crane and hears roars coming from the Oscorp building after the Gonali device has now been taken. And with that, he's now running to find Dr. Youth, and then Peter finds him, and when he's about to kill Dr. Youth and Gwen Stacy's father, Captain Stacy comes in and shoots him in the back. Spider-Man then comes in and fights him, and their fight takes them outside to the side of the building. They fight each other, they smack down, and they smash some stuff down. And then with some of the bombs Lizard had, which he had been disabling early in the film, when the police called on the police, luckily he told them to disable them all. Peter was about 50 of them were hidden around the city, and so he told them, and he left them all there to blow up. And luckily, he disabled 10 of them. He disabled 10 of them 10 of them were disabled in the other half of the city. And he was down to 30%. He was so far up to 30 to 40%. And up to 50. So 30, 40. And then the last 10 is taken down by the police. And they're all put in there. But there were a few more that didn't get to plant. But luckily, they exploded on an earlier area, which Spider-Man flipped them and threw them up in the air. One of them was standing near the Captain Stacy and Gwen. He threw it up above, and it blew up, destroying some of Oscorp Tower. While the Lizard was trying to get up there, a police helicopter distracted him after he entered Val, and then so Spider-Man swung up and knocked the Lizard down. They fought a bit. The fight exactly happens like it does in the film on Oscorp Tower. When he throws Spider-Man off the building, Spider-Man flips back. Then Lizard throws a liquid nitrogen tank at Spider-Man. Spider-Man dodges it. They fight. Then he gets hidden into the shadows after swinging down, and then Lizard taunts him about his parents, and then he slams down on him, and then Lizard throws him around. When he tries to swing up, Lizard slams him down, and then Spider-Man dodges him and tries to get to liquid nitrogen. Lizard takes his web shooters, dangles them off the building, crushes them, then takes 2 of his hands and holds them with one of his claws, wraps his tail around his neck, and pulls the mask off Peter, and starts talking to Peter about he has no mother, no father, and that he's all alone. No mother, no father, no uncle, and that he's all alone. Captain Stacy comes in and shoots him and gives him the antidote. And luckily, he still had the antidote and gave two of the vials to Captain Stacy to give to him and to give it to everyone else. And so, whilst he's doing that, the Gennali device is now armed and ready to shoot. Peter's nearly able to disable it, but right before he disables it, Peter's still fighting the lizard and kicks him around and then swings up to the tower after his mask was removed. He's able to get it back on, though. Luckily, he gets it back on again, though. And then swings up to the tower pole and removes it and then places a new one in. But right then, Lizard takes it and then he's able to disable the Gennali device and the projectile does not get launched. So, right as then, he then takes the Gennali device and takes it, flips it, and throws it into a liquid nitrogen pit below and takes a cure and injects it into Dr. Connors, and the Gennali device that he once had was now in his hands. So, unlike I actually retcon that, he does not throw it into the pit of liquid nitrogen. He swaps it and launches it, and it cures the city. And then he takes it and chucks it in the pit of liquid nitrogen. The tower then, the antenna tower starts to collapse. Peter luckily jumps off of it and is luckily caught by the lizard. But his arm crackles down, so Connors with his other arm takes him and pulls him up. Peter is luckily able to get to his mask and gets Dr. Connors safely to the ground, and he gets arrested. With this, Peter soon realizes what has happened, and after that, luckily Captain Stacy, in my version, Captain Stacy does not die. After getting Dr. Connors there, he is then arrested, and so that is that. Peter then gets home to Aunt May and gives her the eggs, and has done successfully gotten organic eggs. With this, we then cut to the next shot of Peter, then now in his area with his voicemail on there, and after being at Uncle Ben's grave, clicks it and gets his voicemail from Uncle Ben. And is complete now that his journey with his parents and knowing what happened to them complete. He now realizes what he can do and realizes that what his Uncle Ben told him is inspiring. And with great power does indeed come great responsibility. And so, with this, Peter then turns off the phone and then goes back to school. After this, Peter talks a bit with Flash, and Flash then he goes into class. And after that, cuts to a shot with Peter and Gwen at her apartment, talking a bit and eating popcorn and watching a movie. During this time, Gwen and Liz didn't get to know each other a bit, and they become a bit of friends and often talk a bit about Peter. And so, after this, they talk a bit, and then Captain Stacy comes in and says, "I'm off now." Hugs Gwen and kisses her, and then shakes Peter's hand and says, "I'll be seeing you, Peter." And then Peter goes, "When? When will I be seeing you?" And then Captain Stacy replies with, "Well, you'll be just seeing me around maybe when I get back, or the next time I see you. Yeah, I'll be seeing you though." And then I'll be seeing you soon, Parker. And then after leaving, he says, "See you, sir, Mr. Stacy." And then Captain Stacy says back, "Call me George," and then leaves. And after that, Peter looks at Gwen, and they look at each other in a cartoonish fashion, and realize maybe there's something more to that than meets the eye. Then we cut to the shot of the final swing scene from the original film, and it foreshadows the Brooklyn Bridge and all that, and it ends the film with them final swinging and the credits roll. And the post-credit scene with Dr. Connors and the gentleman talking, that is the same. So that is the Amazing Spider-Man rewrite. Now, my voice may have been talking too fast, but I love this rewrite. Personally, it takes what I really liked about the Earthcore Studios rewrite, but kind of took out all the stuff I thought was unnecessary and I thought didn't need to be included, but I nonetheless loved the ideas he had for the film, and I think it was awesome that I got to use his video as one of the half bassists. Not to mention, my template was the Amazing Spider-Man film, and the upgrades and changes and ideas came from Earthcore Studios, and the deleted scenes that were indeed in the film, and alternate ideas that were scrapped, and the stuff like Liz Allen and all that, and Ned and all that was all added in from me. And obviously, Liz and Peter will end up breaking up within the start of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But nonetheless, this film will be exactly the same. Besides that, the film was good, decent in its real version, but had it gone a rewrite, this rewrite, in my opinion, would be my definitive experience of The Amazing Spider-Man, combining what I really liked about the actual film and the Earthcore Studios rewrite, which I really loved, and combining my own ideas I thought would be grateful, and all the deleted content and cut stuff, merging it into one, I think it will provide a awesome experience for me. But nonetheless, tell me guys what you think in the comments below. Do you like The Amazing Spider-Man? Do you hate it? And next time I'll be returning with a rewrite of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. A heavy rewrite. That one will be a big project. But nonetheless, I'll see you guys later for the next video. Make sure to subscribe, click like, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any new content. And just go into the settings and click that notification bell wherever that devious thing may be, so you don't miss any of this content. I'll see you guys later. Ciao.